I think I know who all of you guys are picking too. Actually, Jonathan's a wild card. I know who Tony's picking, and I know who Will's picking.
All right, you guys ready?
We'll see.
Welcome in, Minnesota sports fans, to another edition of Vikings on SI. Jonathan Harrison here, joined by Joe Nelson, Will Raggett, Tony Liebert. Guys, couple days away now. Vikings week 2, their home opener this year against the San Francisco 49ers. It couldn't be a much more different test than what they got in week 1 if they tried, with how good this 49ers team is. And with the game just a couple days away, we've kind of broken down all the key matchups. You can go watch that video from yesterday. Also, click subscribe on the channel. It does help us out. Now it's time to make our predictions. We've all gone around. We've all talked and analyzed this game to death at this point. So let's make our predictions for this game. We'll start off with the scoreline, then we'll kind of dig deeper into whatever else we feel like predicting about this game. So I'll go around the horn, starting with Will, then Joe, then Tony. Your predictions for the scoreline and the winner of this game.
Yeah, so I've gone back and forth on this a little bit. I think this could be a solid game here. I mean, the 49ers are nearly touchdown favorites on the road, but I like what the Vikings showed a lot in week 1. I like what I saw from Sam Darnold. I like really what I saw from Brian Flores' defense. Even without, Christian McCaffrey, I think the 49ers are going to be able to run the ball with Jordan Mason. And ultimately, I think I just have to go with the Minnesota Vikings to pull off
Oh my God!
the upset for the second year in a row over the San Francisco 49ers, 24-23. I'm buying in on Brian Flores. I'm buying in on Sam Darnold.
Oh my God!
I think the Vikings. I had this as a loss when I predicted the whole schedule, but then my eyes were opened in week 1. Vikings are going to win this game.
I am your eye doctor. I am your eye doctor. I have opened your eyes to see the world clearly.
Does that helmet still fit? And if so, you must wear it for the rest of the show now.
I was gonna maybe put it on, but with the AirPods, it's like it's a tight squeeze. I have a rather large noggin as well.
Just do it real quick. Take the AirPods out and just do it.
All right. Cool.
There we go. Oh my God!
There we go.
And you were looking for your thumbnail for this video, Jonathan. We found it. I can't believe that just happened. You're so pragmatic and measured and methodical and thoughtful, and all of a sudden here he goes and rips out a freaking purple helmet and says, "Vikings, baby, 2-0."
I think I've had this since I was. I mean, it's got to be from like the early 2000s or something.
That might be Alan Page's first game-worn helmet.
Not a lot of protection in there on the little plastic replica helmet.
That was incredible. All right, Joe, follow that up.
What did you say for a final score?
I said 24-23, a 1-point win. Perhaps on a Will the Thrill Reichard game winner. We'll see.
Is that the name we're going with now? Will the Thrill?
I like Will Stryker.
Will Stryker Reichard.
That's good too.
Yeah.
Joe?
That's impressive. I think this is actually going to be a surprisingly high scoring game. Both offensive schemes are masterful. Kyle Shanahan used motion on 62 of 69 snaps in week 1 against the Jets. I don't know if they'll be able to do that in the noise of US Bank Stadium, but you can rest assured that they're going to be doing exactly on offense what the Vikings do on defense, and that's try to confuse the guys on the other side of the field with pre-snap motion and a lot of different looks. So it's a chess match. Last year we had some fireworks in this matchup. I think the final score was something like 22-19. I think we get a little bit above that this week, and I'm going to say Vikings win this one 33-27. And 33 on the 49ers is I think a little bit edgy and risky, but I'm buying into Sam Darnold. I'm buying into the offense, whether they have Jordan Addison or not. There's a lot of things that scare the heck out of me on that San Francisco defense, but I think the scheme and the home field advantage is just going to allow Minnesota to kind of rip and shred this 49ers defense up and down the field all day long. It's just a matter of how many points the Shanahan's 49ers offense accumulate against Minnesota's defense. But Minnesota's going to be 2-0, guys. There's definitely a national momentum happening. I think Daniel Jeremiah was one of only about the only one of like 10 guys on NFL Network to pick the Vikings to win. Kyle Rudolph's going on national TV and picking the Vikings to win. There's a bit of a snowball thing happening right now, and the believers, they're rallying, boys. Will's one of them. I've been on this thing, driving this bandwagon from the start, and it'll be 33-27 Vikings.
All right, Tony.
Yeah, I think it's funny that Joe's using a former Viking on national media to push his agenda that everyone's getting on the Vikings bandwagon. I think Kyle Rudolph might be a little biased, but um, I do think the Vikings are going to have a chance to win this game. I think it might come down to whether or not they can get Brock Purdy to make a mistake. I think that's kind of how you beat the 49ers. If they're able to run their stuff, if they're able to get all their weapons involved, they're just very difficult to beat. It's just they have better football players than most every team in the NFL, and they have better football players than the Vikings. But Brock Purdy, when you do get pressure on him, he tends to make a mistake every now and then, like we saw last year in this game. Obviously, he was banged up, and that had a lot to do with it. But if they can get that same level of pressure on him, I think they could win this game. But I will go the other way, and I don't think that will happen. I think it sounds like Christian McCaffrey might play, and I think that will help settle Brock Purdy down a little bit. And I do think the Vikings will be in this and they'll have a chance to win, but I think a late 49ers field goal from Jake Moody will put them ahead 23-20 in a low-scoring game. So I'm going the opposite way, Joe.
Yeah, I feel like you're probably more on the right track than I am, but I'm feeling the vibe. And that's why I went high on this one. Here's a fun fact, guys. The 49ers in the last 2 years in games with Christian McCaffrey in the lineup, 23-5.
Whew.
In games without Christian McCaffrey, 3-4. So,
Wow.
I mean, there's a lot of weight in that one superstar running back and what he means to that team. And I know Jordan Mason looked good and Elijah Mitchell and all these guys have looked good over the years, but that man carries a different tone. And when he's in the lineup, they're tough to beat. 5 losses. And guess
one
what?
of those was last year at US Bank
That's right.
Stadium.
Yeah, he had 2 touchdowns. He looked fantastic. Vikings defense held him to 55 yards rushing. He had 51 receiving. But the dude's an animal. And if he can't go or is not 100% on Sunday and limited in any way, that's definitely a benefit to the purple.
Yeah, the last year in that game where the Vikings beat the 49ers, the 49ers were held to just 65 yards rushing total.
Yeah.
It was the only game all season they were held below 100 yards rushing, and we know how good this rushing attack can be. The Vikings held the Giants to just 74 yards rushing last week. What do we think the impact of this deeper defense for the Vikings will have on this game? Because we saw last year, as I just said, they did a really good job. Now, granted, they didn't have Trent Williams, so that does take a significant blocking component out of their lineup, and we saw the impact that had on them. But it's still a notable stat to keep in mind that the Vikings had success shutting down this running game where very few teams have had success over the past handful of years against Kyle Shanahan's team shutting this running game down. What impact will that running game have for the Giants, and how good do we think the Vikings defense can be this year against it, Will?
Yeah, I think the 49ers, I mean, obviously they would love to have Christian McCaffrey in the lineup. It's an interesting thing where, like, he seems to be telling reporters, I'm good, I'm going to play. I'm having that mindset of I'm going to play. But I think that was also the case last week, and then he, of course, didn't end up playing. So we'll see. That's going to be an organizational decision when you're dealing with Achilles tendonitis and a calf strain and whatever, and you're that valuable. They're going to want to play it smart. But, yeah, it's a lot more dangerous if he's in the lineup. If it's Jordan Mason, they still look like they're going to be quite a load to deal with on the ground because, yes, they have Trent Williams in this game, which they didn't last year. They have Deebo Samuel in this game, which they didn't last year, who you can hand the ball off to Deebo, use him on end around, screen passes. I mean, traditional wide receiver routes, of course. So that guy is going to be a problem for the Vikings as well. And then one thing I'll say is we'll find out the final injury report a little after we're recording here. But Harrison Smith missing practice on Thursday with a hip injury is concerning for the Vikings, because when guys pop up on the injury report midweek, that means they picked up something in practice and not a lot of time to turn that around. So if Harrison Smith can't play, as good as Theo Jackson is, and maybe you see some Bobby McCain or whoever, and the rest of the Vikings defense, that would be a pretty impactful loss on the back end, leadership wise.
Yeah,
But also, Jonathan, are you going to give us your score prediction here?
Oh yeah, I forgot to do that. I think I'm the biggest dissenter of the group, which has me concerned because I don't like being in that column. I'm going 49ers 27-20 over the Vikings. I think this will be close. I think it'll be a late touchdown that really separates them. I just think that because the 49ers seem to have more weapons than they did last year, I think that provides the 49ers a better chance at beating the Vikings in US Bank Stadium this year. Don't get me wrong, I really liked what I saw from the Vikings last week, so I think they'll be very competitive. I think Sam Darnold will be able to hold up well against the 49ers and play pretty well, but I just think the 49ers are just too good at this point, and I think my expectations were changed for the Vikings, but I don't think enough to pull off the upset against the Super Bowl favorite. So I'm going 49ers 27-20 here.
Another guy we haven't talked about that didn't play in last year's game was Deebo Samuel. I mean,
Yeah.
The dude is a monster. He didn't play in that game, right?
No, he did not.
Yeah, right. So you bring Deebo Samuel into the mix with Brandon Ayuk, who's going to be motivated after dropping a touchdown pass last week and trying to live up to that big contract. They're a terrifying team, and George Kittle early in the season versus late in the season, that's fresh. George Kittle fresh is a rarity.
Yeah.
He plays so hard, and he's always so banged up, but still effective. They're going to be very, very tough to beat, no question about it. But again, Christian McCaffrey, and I'd be willing to bet right now that Christian McCaffrey doesn't play. I mean, I know he's saying he's going to play. I just don't think the 49ers are going to rush him into anything. Look at this. According to the Mayo Clinic, Achilles tendonitis can, quote, weaken the tendon, making it more vulnerable to a tear.
And it's on turf.
Exactly. Field turf that nobody likes, whether it's new or not at US Bank Stadium. There's just no chance the 49ers are going to rush a guy back with the threat of his Achilles exploding like Kirk Cousins and Aaron Rodgers did last season. It's just they're not going to do that with Christian McCaffrey. I would be shocked if he plays. And if he does play, the Vikings should be afraid because that means he's 100% healthy. There's just no way they're going to put him on the field unless he's 100% ready to go.
Yeah, I tend to trust the big name newsbreakers in the NFL, the Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport. And when Ian Rappaport says, it's a long shot to play, I think that the logic behind that makes a lot of sense, but behind what Joe just said. So we'll see. I do. It's certainly the safer pick, what Tony and Jonathan have gone with to take the 49ers in this game. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Vikings lost somewhat handily. I just think that's how good the 49ers are. I would be surprised if it was the other way and the Vikings just romped. I'm sticking with my Vikings 1-point upset pick, but they're going to need to play really well on both sides of the ball, special teams even, to make it happen. My one bold prediction for this game is I can't get over just the images in my head that I have from standing on the sideline at TCO at training camp on 90-degree days and watching Jalen Nailor just make catch after catch. So I'm taking Jalen Nailor to go for like 80-plus yards and a touchdown in this game. I think he's a legitimate NFL number 3 receiver, but I think he could even step into that number 2 role and have a really solid game with Sam Darnold. So I expect at least one deep ball to Nailor, and I think he gets in the end zone for the second straight week.
How do you think Brian Flores is going to attack this 49ers offense? Obviously, the Vikings blitz more than any team in the league, but I was writing a story for Vikings on SI this morning. Brock Purdy was talking about how facing Flores is, quote, illusion fest. They disguise as well as anybody in the league. They bring a ton of pressure. But Purdy is a freaking monster against the blitz. He led the NFL in pass yards per attempt by 1.5 yards, which is a lot, over 10 yards per attempt, and 15 touchdowns. That also led the NFL against the blitz last season. And he shredded the Vikings 15 of 19 for like 190 yards against the blitz last year. I got to imagine Brian Flores looks at that and says, "This guy is just too good at getting the ball out of his hands fast, and they're gonna lay off the blitz this week." What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think it'll be kind of a pick your spots week for Brian Flores, where obviously he's going to send pressure at times and he's going to dial up some of those creative looks, but it's not going to be a 40%, 50% blitz rate like we've seen a lot of the time from him
Yeah.
because of what you said. Brock Purdy can get the ball out of his hands quick. You can get it to Jordan Mason or Ayuk or Kittle or Samuel quickly, and then get those guys in space and create big plays. So I think it's a game where you kind of have to rely on your personnel and obviously do a lot of disguising with the coverage looks, try to make things tough on Purdy, send the occasional blitz. But this is a game where Jonathan Grunard needs to win his matchup off the edge, and Andrew Van Ginkel needs to win his matchup, and Ivan Pace needs to fly around and make plays, and Dallas Turner could help you here with some rotational pass rush snaps, and Stephon Gilmore. You go down the line, like your guys need to win their individual matchups, read their keys. Josh Metellus was saying this week, and know their assignment, and just make plays, and don't blow any coverage looks or anything like that. So I think this is going to be a really, really fascinating test for this Vikings defense.
Well, we already saw that the blitz rate went down from last year, where it was 51% last year, I believe. In the first game against the Giants, it was only at 24.5%, according to Pro Football Reference. So we've already seen Brian Flores make some of those adjustments with the deeper lineup he has on the defensive side, not feeling like he needs to blitz everybody all the time, everywhere. And it certainly helped and worked out this week. Tony, I think the question for me is how this offensive line holds up. We saw Brian O'Neill pop up on the injury report, limited duty yesterday, although it is limited, so he'll probably still go, I would imagine. But we saw the impact that Dexter Lawrence had on the inside last week against Garrett Bradbury and Ed Ingram. How do we think the Vikings offensive line holds up in front of Sam Darnold this week?
Yeah, our discussion earlier this week was definitely revolved around that. The Vikings offensive line looked good in week one against a Giants defensive front that has a lot of talent, but the interior, there are a lot of issues, like you mentioned, with Ed Ingram. And the 49ers are definitely going to test him again on the edge with Nick Bosa and Leonard Floyd. The Vikings have shown that their tackles are able to hold up in those situations, but that interior, I think, will be one of the biggest matchups in this game. If Ed Ingram can hold up and the Vikings, are they able to run the ball? Because the 49ers are a unique team that they rely on those big plays a lot, that they rely on Deebo Samuel breaking out a big run, Christian McCaffrey when he's healthy, breaking out a big screen pass or something, and then George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk. They can attack you with all these different weapons, and the Vikings, if Jordan Addison is not healthy, they don't have that many weapons right now. They have Aaron Jones and Justin Jefferson, which obviously have looked tremendous through the first week, but I don't know if the big plays are going to be able to be evened up there. And defensively, it's going to be important for the Vikings to limit those on the 49ers end. And I think the interior for the Vikings is going to be a big reason if they can or can't get those big plays.
I've got nothing to add to that. I was just staring at San Francisco's red zone numbers, 2 out of 5 in week number 1, and then the other big stat that stood out was 38 minutes of time of possession. So if you can't stop the run, the 49ers are going to beat you. That's got to be the number one priority this week. Whether it's Jordan Mason or Christian McCaffrey running the football, the Vikings have to make them one-dimensional, like they did last year, really.
Yeah, you got to hold up against the run and not just let them rip off 4 or 5 yards, and really be methodical and control the time of possession. And then again, I mean, it's not the most interesting analysis. I think everybody knows this, but it's just going to come down to, do we get the same Sam Darnold that we got in week 1 against a much, much, much better defense? Or are there going to be some of the turnover issues that have really plagued him throughout his career? This game comes down to Darnold making the throws, finding Jefferson, finding Naylor, The Vikings are obviously going to try to get Aaron Jones really involved again, but Darnold's going to have to do it. He's going to have to be poised and decisive and take care of the football. And if he does that, I think the Vikings have a chance to really be in this game.
There's a lot of respect coming from San Francisco about Sam Darnold. They got to know him last year, and obviously they're going to be respectful on a friendly basis, but they're not talking him down one bit. Every word that's come out of Nick Bosa or Fred Warner or Christian McCaffrey or Brock Purdy or Kyle Shanahan's mouth has been positive. It's all like, hey, we know what
Did you see what the that one cornerback said, though?
No.
Diamador Lenore was like, yeah, me and Sam had a really good connection when he was on the scout team last year. He loved to throw me the ball.
Oh, I didn't see that.
That was good. But you're right. Shanahan, everybody else they've really praised Darnold.
Everybody says, hey, he's got underrated athleticism. If you give him time to throw, and that's really the secret sauce for Sam Darnold, time to throw, he will kill you with his arm. And he has the ability to move and extend plays. And you know, we've seen that, just we've gotten some sprinkles of it, right? It's like, you know, crumbs off a piece of toast. We want the whole piece by the end of the season. He lit up the Giants, and some of those throws were marvelous. And that's kind of why he was obviously the 3rd overall pick 6 years ago. So first opportunity to really prove it against a juggernaut. Here we go. He's never had this opportunity before. You got to think he's as thirsty as anybody in the NFL this Sunday.
That's a lot of pressure on him, and that concerns me based off his past, but I really did like what I saw last week against the Giants, and I'm hoping that that something similar happens this week against the 49ers in a big game for the Vikings. Week 2, both teams coming in 1-0, both teams coming in beating New York teams, and the Vikings looking to continue their streak of beating the 49ers in Minnesota. Looking forward to it, boys. Continue reading all of our work over at Vikings on SI, and as well as Twins, Timberwolves, Gophers, and Badgers over on SI as well, covering it all for you here. We'll come back Monday. Well, we'll have the recap Sunday afternoon of the Vikings game. Tony, I believe you'll have the recap of the Gophers game coming up against Nevada right here on the YouTube, on Bring Me the Sports YouTube channel as well. So we'll keep you going with content throughout the weekend, and then we'll be back Monday with another topic to discuss across Minnesota sports. Click the subscribe button. It does really help us out, and we'll talk to you again on Monday.